Welcome everyone to our last advanced bootcamp session. Hold on one second, letting in Callie. This is our last session together prior to the final showcase. I am really excited to have everyone talk with this afternoon and hear great wisdom from Terri Glueck and Sophie Burkholder, both amazing media specialists who have, devoted a majority of their career in communicating with stakeholders, businesses, and the media, and sharing the vision of founders throughout their journey. So I think this is an excellent way to wrap up where we are in the UpPrize cycle. So I'm going to turn the stage over to them. Please feel free to ask questions. And this is always a lively session because it's really relevant in the era of social media and the changes in journalism. One thing I can add is that I'll provide details about Thursday by the end of the day today. You all have my phone number. I can share it again in the chat. But we will make sure everyone's up to speed for Thursday's events and practices in the morning. So I'm turning it over to Sophie and Terri. Thank you.
Sophie, how about if we just go around? I know that everybody knows one another, but I don't necessarily know who goes with which company yet. So I would appreciate it, and I'm seeing Sophie's nodding, if you all just say who you are, what company you're with, and maybe really super fast, one sentence about what you do. So Alexis, on my screen, you're first.
You know, this used to always get me in school also, where I just somehow was always tagged in first. Now, my name is Alexis Russell. I am the co-owner of Russell General Contracting, and our project for the UpPrize competition is Viju, the database. So we are pretty much providing a database of buildings for nonprofits to be able to source information, processes, procedures, so that we can rebuild our communities sustainably. Good. That was more than one sentence, but you know.
Perfect, though. Okay, Art, you're next.
Hi, my name is Art Robinson. I'm the founder of Black Diamond Rewards, and we're a mobile cashback application that seeks to level the playing field for Black-owned businesses here in PA and nationally. Thank you very much.
Great, thank you. Got Sophie. So Ellie, you're next.
Hi, everyone. I'm Ellie Gordon, the founder and CEO of Behavior, and Behavior is a digital health company that's using AI, behavioral health technology, and wearables to predict and prevent health crises for individuals struggling with their mental health or addiction.
Great, thank you. Callie?
Hey there, I'm Callie Watts. I'm the founder and CEO of Lotus Fertility Insurance. We're looking to create a new product, a new insurance product for fertility, designed for fertility. So supplemental insurance to help cover the out-of-pocket expenses that primary healthcare doesn't cover for fertility treatments and services.
Great. Alexander?
Hey, my name is Alex. I'm the co-founder and CEO of TestaSeat. We're making custom seating systems for children with disabilities by using 3D printing to make it more sustainable and reducing the prices for the end users.
Great. Okay, I have multiple people with, I think it's Anna Lee.
Yeah, hi, I'm Anna. I'm the CEO and founder of Corion Health, where we're trying to empower people to get heart health screenings from the comfort and convenience of home.
Great. Just taking a note, hang on. And then Meg, I think.
Hey, Terri, I'm Meg Trade. I'm co-founder and COO of Lotus Fertility Insurance with Callie Watts, who just shared. So yeah, thank you.
And did I miss anybody? Okay, so I know we want to respect everyone's time.
Oh, wait,
Talfa, there you are. Okay.
Sorry. I'm Talfa from Sustainable, and Sustainable measures business health to help entrepreneurs improve their business and be more successful.
Great. Thanks. And I'm glad you got that in there before I moved on. Perfect. Sophie, just so you know, I sent some slides to Joyce, but it's not unlike what we've done in the past. So either we can go through those, and you can jump in. How do you want to do this?
Yeah,
I'm through a loop for everyone, so sorry.
Yeah, no worries. Unless, people want to do a Q&A format first, I think it might be a good idea to kind of quickly go over the basics and then jump into questions.
That sounds good. Joyce, are you able to call that up? Because if I share my screen, then I won't be able to see how folks are doing.
Yes, I can. Just give me 1 second. I will get that up. If you all want to continue.
Yeah, so while Joyce is doing that, let me just say what we're trying to accomplish today. You could look at it in lots of different ways, because media outreach or media relations, whatever you want to call it, it's very similar to structuring a communications plan in general, which is just trying to get the right message to the right people at the right time using the right vehicle. So sometimes the vehicle might be your social media channels. Sometimes it might be media outlets because you're trying to reach a specific audience or readership or followership. But once you have, it's like Legos, once you have sort of the building blocks, what am I going to tell investors? What am I going to tell a general audience? What am I going to tell a more technical or specialized audience? You should feel free to be able to put those pieces together as you need them and track them. Is that effective? Is that an effective message for this type of audience? So really what we're trying to give you today are some of those building blocks. And as Joyce pulls up the presentation, I usually start with communications as a strategy. Media relations is just one little tactical piece of it. For example, you're going to end up telling your story of what you do and how you do it and why it's needed and why it's unique and how you're going to be the one to solve it in lots of different variations for, a population that might use a customized seat, for example. They're going to be a little more looking for information, very specific kinds of information, rather than a general audience. The same with any of your particular organizations or companies. However, what you're going to build is something that's effective to support your business goals, something that brings in more users or customers, something that appeals to those with dollars attached to them. It might be a foundation or others, or it might be you want to appeal in the broadest sense. Often people say, oh, I just want to get my name out there. But really what your goal is because you want to be able to recruit them for your team in the future when you have either more money or you grow in some way. So often at the startup phase, the audiences that you care about are potential customers, investors, potential investors, or potential employees. But when I speak about customers, you have to tailor that to what works for you. Is that purchasers of your product or service? Is that followers or influencers who can influence the purchase of such a thing? You might need to drill down a little bit in who needs the message, when do they need the message, why do they care about the message, and what platform do they use to receive their messages? A lot of people ask, do we need to have a social media presence? Not necessarily, if that's not where the eyeballs are for any of those audiences, the people who are going to use and buy your product or service. the people who are going to invest in it, or the people who might ultimately be part of your team. It is likely, however, that those that influence those folks, they do get their information from social media. And so you may have to have a Facebook page, or Twitter, now called X, some kind of feed that gives them a little bit more information. Sophie, did you want to talk at all about any of what I just said?
Yeah, I mean, all of those were really good points. And I think it's, like you said, good to think of talking to the media as part of a really dynamic communication strategy. And I think we'll talk today about the differences between like what might be good for just a social media post and what advantages talking to the press can offer, because sometimes it might seem like it's the same content, but talking to the press has it can send a different kind of message in a good way. So yeah.
And one thing Sophie didn't say is that Sophie used to cover technology for a very specific publication. She was very indicative of the type of writer who might cover you. Deadline driven, story driven, and often used her own social media to engage folks like you. I'm looking for this type of person, story idea. And that is one reason to use your social media channels. Not only are they immediate, they help to establish you as a thought leader in your space, whether that's commenting on someone else's content or creating your own. But they help to establish you as someone in this space. And also, it's a way for journalists to find you. I mean, in today's world, it's a very shortcut driven, deadline driven, news cycle driven way to just reach out and say, hey, does anyone have information on X? And that might be you. And you want to be able to know who's talking about this so that you can weigh in. So we just talked about the media outreach. It's a tactic, just like anything else is your social media strategy, your email marketing. Media outreach helps to support your business goals, brand development and positioning, sales and marketing support, or helps you reach a potential investor, or it's forever. It lives out there in the universe and it's searchable by people that you want to bring into your organization to help. I'm just gonna, thanks. Thank you, Joyce. I appreciate you driving. One of the things you can do in planning for how to speak to the media about what you do is plan your talking points and then highlight them. This actually is not information that's unique to media relations. It should be how you approach your website. It's anything that you feel is important to any audience. You're going to point those people directly to the most important information. A reporter is no different. They want to know what is the most important information. I had a 20-minute phone interview with you, but we talked about lots of different things, where you're from, why you need this, how did you get involved with this? But somewhere in the conversation, you want to be able to say, if you don't remember anything else, remember this, or here's the most important information, or I like to think this is the most salient thing about what people know about us. Something that helps a reporter or anybody else you're talking to through any other medium. This is the most important information to retain. Do you want to talk about that, Sophie?
Yeah, I'd love to. I think so. When I was a reporter, I wrote for Technically, it's like the word technical.ly. It was through a fellowship program called Report for America. But like my primary focus was covering the tech industry and startups in Pittsburgh. And like one practice that I tried to have with every interview was at the end asking the interviewee, you know, is there anything that we didn't cover that you'd like me to know? And I think whether your interviewer asks you that or not, you should, you know, try to think as if they are. So I always tell people to think of interviews not even as interviews, but as conversations. And, you know, it's okay to kind of try to tell the journalist a message that you might think is clear, but to like really hammer down on it, like Terri said, because it's not. And that's kind of how surprises sometimes can happen with stories when there's a miscommunication. So I think sometimes there's a tendency for people when they're first talking to the media to, you know, be a little hesitant about what exactly to share, or like be a little nervous about what the story might look like. But I think that this strategy on the slide right here about, you know, ahead of time, really making sure that you have, you know, your ideas and the way you want to say them jotted down so that you don't forget and make it very clear is the best way to approach that. And yeah, I really do think thinking of it as a conversation is key to approaching the media, because it shouldn't be an intimidating experience. Like, you both have the same goal of trying to get a cool, exciting message out to the audience.
And while we're on this slide, so Joyce, if you just stay on that for 1 second where the arrow is, I'm going to give you a good example. So if a reporter, great, that's it. If a reporter is interested in a very broad general story about the UpPrize winners, it might be either UpPrize or it could be a category. I'm going to do a story about sustainability or racial equity or some very large topic that you might fit into, women's entrepreneurship, Black entrepreneurs, whatever. You may fit into that story and you may want to be a part of that story. You could also answer just questions about that story. But if you think ahead of time, what do I really want the reporter to know about my business? It could be for a follow-up interview or a follow-up story. It doesn't, you can plan your answers to the story that you know the reporter is interested in, and that's just by asking them, hey, what are you writing about? It may be at the end, as Sophie just said, well, what else do you want me to know? Or you could say that yourself if they don't give you the opening. Hey, maybe you want to follow up because here's an interesting problem that this group has, and my company organization, we're addressing that, and here's how. And this is why your readership would be interested in it. You want to fit into the story that the reporter has on the table for you, but you also might want to think about what's in the future. If that's being part of a group coverage, why does the reporter want to come back to you when the timing is right? It might be a little several months down the road when after you've already appeared in print or in some other media. But why do they want to follow up with you? So make sure that you have your messaging in your head for the current story, but also what do you want them to know about you in general? Are there any questions about that before we go on, or anything that we've talked about? Okay, I guess we're ready to go to the next one, Joyce. Thank you. So one thing that I think that whether you're an UpPrize or you're a startup or many of the founders that we worked with, they don't think that the media wants to hear from them. They think the media wants to hear from a representative from Google or, you know, a very big company, or, you know, I'm bothering them somehow. But really, the media needs you as much as you need them. they are on this deadline cycle. They've got to constantly produce content. You have the content that they're looking for and that their audience is interested in. You're not bothering them. They will tell you, hey, I'm on a deadline and I can't get to you until whenever. It might be in a day or two. It's better to try to reach someone when they want to be reached than not try to reach them at all and have no way of connecting. Again, I don't know if you want to weigh in on this, Sophie, but I started out in my career as a very shy person. Oh, I don't want to bother them. But I have found over time that is not at all how reporters think about the relationship with you and your company.
Yeah, I agree with that. I think that, like, even if you reach out to the media with a story idea and they say, that's not really fitting what I'm looking for right now, I wouldn't get discouraged by that, because it's not like saying your startup is unimportant or your story doesn't matter. It's just like, that doesn't fit what I'm working on this week. Because truly, like Terri said, it is like, especially with daily reporters and breaking news reporters, like, things are just constantly moving. And so there's just a big chance that they might not be able to focus on what you're giving them at that moment. Typically I think tech and entrepreneurship's news cycle is driven by big funding rounds or big launches of new technology or things like that, or whenever the governor comes to town for a tech thing, something like that. So just because you're like somewhat smaller story might get passed over that week doesn't mean it's not worth coming back to. It's not worth staying in touch. Not everything is going to be seen as newsworthy by every outlet, but given how busy journalists can be, I think it is on the founders sometimes to really try and keep journalists aware. And Terri's right, especially like with the local news outlets that are here. Like she said, you might think that they want to talk to a representative from Google, but that's actually not true. Like when I was a reporter, if I was going to write a story on women's entrepreneurship, of course I would want to talk to, I'm forgetting the name of the fertility startup that you guys have, but I would love to talk to you guys if I were writing a story on that, because, female founders, plus also this like really cool technology in a very needed space. And I would think that you have expertise to speak to a lot of local trends that are more interesting than what I might get in a corporate statement from somebody. So that was a bit rambly, but yeah, just,
it was a good lead into the other concept that's on this slide, which is the media wants your expertise and your point of view. They want your point of view more than they want what's, immediate. It's true, as Sophie just said, if you're breaking news, they want to know what that news is. But that's seldom the case with, say, an UpPrize organization or company or startup. They very seldom have news, but they do have a point of view. And they have an expert view and insight into some sort of trend that's happening. Either, I'm just going to take something that comes to mind from this UpPrize group. They want to know what's happening with behavior modification for either addictive behaviors or other kinds of, or the application of AI. This is on a lot of people's mind these days. Is it the future of everything? Is it the end of everything? They want to know, reporters want to be able to write about these big trends. Women's issues, also a hot trend. Thinking about, how to increase mobility for people who have mobility challenges and accommodations that are easy. I think we're becoming more aware of the needs of folks who are either, who used to be termed disabled, and how do we include folks in a more inclusive society? I think that there are tons of trends that each of you represent that you can speak to, not only because you want to, but because you have some kind of expertise in and insight into what's happening in that area. So I think the next slide, if you go to the next one, Joyce, I think that is partly, well, what do I tell the media I have expertise in? What should I pitch? So some of the topics are written here that you can consider. There are also blog topics for your social media feeds, topics to weigh in on when you're commenting on others, which are timely conversation starters. Use what's happening in the news as the hook. I'll stick with fertility for a second. They may not cover, the media may not cover your end or your company within an article about women's either fertility issues or kind of related issues around female or infant mortality or anything else that deals loosely with these kinds of topics. But when those topics are covered, you want to be able to follow up with a reporter and say, yes, or no, not exactly. This is the way that we have seen is effective. But it's a time to sort of reach out and get your personal view and expertise into a reporter's hands. I'm calling it breaking views rather than news, because it's your expertise that you're trying to impart, or your unique insight or perspective, kind of the yes and, well, you covered this, but here's what else to know. The thing that most reporters really want to be able to cover over time and know something about are trends. This has nothing to do with this particular group, but return to the office. It's a hot trend. Well, actually it might. Maybe it's a database of, I don't know exactly what that building, Alexis, I don't know too much about that database of buildings, but maybe it fits into this bigger trend of what's happening in downtowns, what's happening with return to work, what neighborhoods are hot, what's progressing. It may be related loosely to what you're doing, but excuse me, when you weigh in on these big trends, that has more staying power than just something that's happening on Thursday. Would you agree with that, Sophie?
Yeah, I would. And I think that it's a good idea to kind of make those connections to what you see happening in maybe national, international news. Like for Chorion Health, maybe there's a new report or a new finding issued that's like the heart health of Americans is not doing well or something. And so that's when maybe you email a local reporter and you're like, hey, we actually work on technology related to this. This seems like a new report. I wasn't sure if you're aware of it. I think this could be a good story. I think, yeah, just like making those connections is always more interesting, and also frankly helps with SEO, because like journalism is still very much about readership. And so you want to maximize, like as a journalist, as a reporter, you want to make sure that your story is as relevant as possible. So when people search Pittsburgh heart tech, your story about Chorion Health comes up first. So I think trying to engage with those timely topics that you'll see in the national news outlets is always helpful.
Comments or questions before we move on?
I have a question. Just so when is it like, how do you know who to reach out to? I'd like the world of reporters, and I mean, I don't know many. I'm hopeful, like, maybe I'll get to shake hands with some at the UpPrize event, but how do you kind of navigate that world as somebody who's new to it, and what's appropriate to reach out? How do you get intros and that kind of thing?
So I can jump in first. Sophie, you can also jump in. I think of this as any kind of homework, right? So if you want to know who your customers, your potential customers are, you probably keep a list of this is the profile that I want to reach. This is who is the decision maker. This is how I'm going to reach them. And this is what's happened. I emailed them and asked for further follow-up. I got it or I didn't. You're probably tracking in some way or another, or your supply, someone you want to be your supplier, or, I'm not sure what's in your pipeline, but tracking the media is no different. You do need to do some homework. You need to read where the eyeballs are and or follow or watch, listen to the media that you want to reach for your business objective. So, for example, if let's take Black Diamond. So if the New Pittsburgh Courier is where you want to be, although I will have to say that's a very difficult medium to break into because they don't always have a local reporter, but let's just stick with that. If you want to reach Black readers in Pittsburgh, that is one source to go to, a traditional source. So who's covering your issues? There is a business editor. That editor puts out certain kinds of content that they think is relevant, and you want to be able to have read, I don't know, half a dozen stories, or I would start with, and be able to converse with that editor. Hey, I know you've covered X, Y, and Z. Here's how we fit and why you might want to follow up with us, and here's how you do it. So, your pitch it's no different than an investor or somebody else that you might want to reach. Why do you need us? I have a unique solution. Here it is. This is the follow-up. This is what I'm asking. This is how to reach me. Let's have coffee, whatever the right follow-up might be. So your tracking can really look pretty simplistic. It could be a Google sheet. It could be a spreadsheet. It could just be a Word document where you look at the media outlet that's meaningful for you. Like if the city paper is going to be meaningful because they cover arts and entertainment, they cover what's happening and what's new in Pittsburgh, and they're going to be meaningful. So then who at that publication covers your area of interest? What do they want to see? They want to see that I'm a female founder. They want to see that I'm under 30. They want to see, I don't know, I'm just making this up as I go along. How are you going to reach them? Or with what message? What's going to resonate with them? So you're best of your crystal ball gazing. And then how you followed up. I sent them an email on October 17th, and I haven't heard from them yet. So then they're going to move down to, I'm going to contact them again in 3 weeks' time. I'm not going to totally write them off. They might have been busy. I'm going to contact them again. I happen to use 10 at a time I tried to do 10 outlets that I think might be interested because it's a manageable number, but it's a big enough number that if you don't hear back from six of them, you may have heard back from 4 of them. It's not for me. It is for me, but I can't get to it. It is for me, and I really want to have coffee with you and follow up. And then the next time you have 40 minutes or whatever to reach out to 10 journalists, you're thinking, well, who's next on my list? Either who's priority B, or you're going to get back to some people you haven't heard from. And I would just track it in a little spreadsheet. I don't know your verticals, and you may not yet know who covers you, but I'll bet you do. I'll bet you read or follow or listen to certain outlets because that's where you get information about your issue, and you want to go a little deeper. So you need to do a little homework. You need to spend a little time on their website trying to get to their business editor or their, healthcare editor, or I'm trying to think of who else would cover issues that you just talked about. But you're going to end up spending, do it in a chunk that's reasonable for you and is not too intimidating. 45 minutes. Do a little research, come up with those 10. Maybe that's all you can do in 45 minutes or an hour the first time. Then you're going to craft a little pitch email to each of those 10, and that's what you can send out in your next little chunk, 60 minutes, 45 minutes, and so forth. You're going to build a little media outreach tracking plan that's doable for you, that's realistic, but that has your business goals in mind.
Yeah, I agree, with everything Terri said. And while she was talking too, I went to 3 local news websites and just tried to find where the contact information is for the tech or business reporter. And all of it's on the About page. So I did Pittsburgh Business Times, I did Next Pittsburgh, and the local NPR station, WESA. And there's plenty more. We could put together a media outlet list of local ones, but most times, yeah, if you just go to the About page on the news website, it might take a little digging to find it. Sometimes it's in a sidebar, sometimes it's at the very bottom, the link to it. But reporters should have their contact information public, and it's totally okay to send a cold email. You don't have to meet them at an event first.
Yeah. I would add to that, if you're like if you want to reach morning talk shows, it's a little harder to find the right person for television, but there are newsroom contacts on every page. WPXI, KDKA, WTAE, the same with radio. Podcasts might be a little difficult unless there's a sort of about us. You may need to go through their social media because often reporters will have their X handle, their Twitter handle, rather than an email. But it just takes a little digging, like Sophie just did. I think that local print email is easier to find. It's a little harder to find more national or niche publications, but if you do your homework, you can find it. Mm-hmm. So it's sort of like, yes, Joyce, stay on that, make a simple plan. I think it was that's it. So just make a little simple plan. I'm going to spend, something that you can manage. I know you wear a lot of hats. You're trying to grow your business. You're trying to grow your user base. You're trying to get to customers. You're trying to manage supply chain. You're building the product. You got a lot of hats to wear, but you're going to have to wear your communications hat sometimes and make it something that you can reasonably do. Can you do it every 2 weeks for 60 minutes? Yes. Yes, actually you can. And you do need to, because that's the same strategy as I need more money. I'm going to have to spend time finding investors. I need more customers. I'm going to have to get the right website content that pulls them in, and then an email campaign that sends them to the website, and I'm going to have to track it. You're going to have to think about media relations the same way. I'm going to have to tell my message, and here's, rather than wishing it will just walk in the door and come to me, I'm going to pursue it and make a plan for it. So this lays it out a little bit. Make it simple, do your homework, say it in an email subject line, or it's essentially like a little tweet, a little social media story. What is the right nugget that I'm gonna open that, because they get an awful lot of mail. I'm going to open that. So if your biggest, UpPrize semi-finalist addresses X, or local UpPrize finalist addresses, rewards for customers of Black businesses. Okay, so if I'm interested in that, I'm going to open that. So say it in the subject line, headline, whatever. You could also think about it as your website. What is that headline that pulls people into the next content? Why does the audience need that info? That's partly the guts of any message. I read this. I think your audience would be interested to know, or needs to know, or it probably, your previous coverage prompted users to ask these questions, and we have a solution to that. But something that builds on that subject line, include a visual if you have it, a photo, a link to a little video. But I say that in 2023 with a little trepidation, because everyone is nervous about what they click on, whether it's an attachment or a link. But you could say professional photos are available, or do you want to see a little video on this? Can I send it? So that you have some sort of rationale to think that is actually going to be viewed. And then be a solid resource. If you say you can follow up with me anytime, then you don't want to be out of town the next day. So I know it sounds like common courtesy, but you'd be amazed at how many people, I'm going to do this right before I go on vacation. I'm going to hit send, and then I'm going to get on a plane in an hour. And then the reporter can't reach you. So be a solid resource, either because you're going to be able to follow up, or also you may not be right for the story, but you may know somebody else through your UpPrize cohort. Oh my gosh, that person is perfect. The reporters are going to remember that you were a good resource, a good connector. It's karma. They're going to reward you with some sort of follow-up in the future, 8 times out of 10. I'll just hold it out there that maybe 2 are not going to do that, but it's unlikely. They're going to use you as a resource at some point, local media especially.
Yeah. I guess this could be a good point to pause too, since we have about 15 minutes left. There's more on the slides, but does anyone have any questions or specific areas that they want to focus on for the rest of this session?
I was happy, like you mentioned it, but about the reaching out way, how short, how long it should be, and also the resources. So I know from myself 2 main problems to reaching out people. So LinkedIn, it's so crowded, and people just sending mails and messages that it's, I see that people that I meet them in person in the future, they even don't open the messages or mail that I was sending them months before. And also mails, we have some problem in many cases that links, photos, or different kind of attachments can be banned or putting your mail to the spam. And again, also, maybe you have some advices what kind of way it's more efficient, maybe in person, or, I don't know.
Yeah, I would say that, like, how do I put this? I think local journalism, you will have a better chance maybe of cutting through the noise, typically because they just get less inbound mail. So hopefully, if you aren't getting a response from somebody, it means it went to spam. And in that case, I would say, for example, take Nate at the Pittsburgh Business Times. He's their tech reporter there, Nate Doty. And he is active on Twitter, he's active on LinkedIn. So if for whatever reason you sent him 2 emails and you haven't heard back in weeks, I think it is okay to DM him on Twitter or reach out to him via LinkedIn, or maybe even message the paper itself, the Pittsburgh Business Times, on Twitter and say, hey, I'm trying to get in touch with you about this, because you're right, things can go to spam pretty easily. And I think especially with larger news publications, like if you're trying to pitch to TechCrunch or something like that, there's definitely a much higher chance that things could get lost in the shuffle, because I briefly freelanced for them and now I cannot use the email I used anymore because of the amount of unending PR that still goes there. So so I think if you target your message to a person as much as possible and go beyond email when that doesn't work for you, that's the best strategy. But it is frustrating that things can go to spam like that. Yeah.
I'm also going to add on to that. If I hear from you, I'm a reporter. If I hear from you every day, every week, it's about something else. I'm having an event, whatever. I probably don't cover all the different things, but if you send me something that's really salient, that's really succinctly in my area of interest. So you've read some of my content. Reporters do like you to consume their own content and follow it. I'm much more likely to look at it. But if you send me something all the time, much of it is irrelevant and not in I don't cover events, or, I couldn't care less that you have a walk coming up. You need to be judicious about when you want to weigh in. And you have a much greater likelihood of attracting attention when it's not PR that's just irrelevant or unwanted. I think that's a mistake that many people make. Oh, I like everything is newsworthy. I just want to get my name out. There's no such thing as bad publicity. I really don't agree with any of those. That's not a strategy. But I'm launching a product that happens like once every so often. That's a big deal. And I would bet you're going to get coverage for that.
And there is some good resource to find local publishers, newspapers, etc.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know if there's like a database that exists. I was kind of offering that, we know of the ones in Pittsburgh, and we'd be happy to put together a short list of that and send it to Joyce, and she can share it with you. If we don't, I think we might honestly already have a resource like that somewhere. But, for, say you move out of Pittsburgh, say you're looking to focus on industry specific publications, trade publications, honestly, Google is just like the best tool. I would just say, fertility publications, like maybe 3D printing technology publications, things like that. Even now I just searched like Pittsburgh newspapers, and you might have to go to the deep, dark second and third pages of your Google results, but you will probably find all the news outlets that you are looking for.
Yeah, so sometimes Google provides the most popular and they are too busy. And then I see that there is also many good local resources that you can find them. So yeah.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah. Any more questions?
Sophie, I'm just curious from being a reporter, is there any like email subject lines that you really recall? Just because I know that's a hard thing to get in the inbox. So just, yeah, anything sticks out in your memory?
I think for me, it was sometimes I would get emails from startups that weren't in Pittsburgh. So it would always be like maybe Pittsburgh startup raises new round, Pittsburgh startup launching AI product, Pittsburgh startup speaking at international conference, Pittsburgh startup mentioned by the federal government in some way, you know, things like that. So just like very succinctly, almost giving me a headline that's like less edited, but it's just like, okay, this is like the so what of the story. So if I saw something that, you know, still said Pittsburgh startup, but it was like long and said something like Pittsburgh startup gathers some midway data on potential product release next spring. I'm like, okay, so we'll check in the spring then. Like, you know, it's good to be aware, but that's not news for me right now. So succinct to the point, whatever that, you know, big news item is, those are the subjects that caught my eye.
Awesome.
And when we're on the subject, one reporter doesn't want to cover what's already been covered by another reporter. So you don't want to see a subject line to Sophie technically. Business Times covers, you know, Lotus fertility. You can just go right to the next email after that, because why would technically want to then cover that if the Business Times already did? So the fact that another reporter has covered you doesn't preclude you, doesn't keep you from being able to seek out coverage in their media outlet, but you want to differ it in some way, and you don't really want to, unless the New York Times covered you, the Wall Street Journal says, or, you know, it's some really important either publication or journal, or it's related to some research that you've done. But overall, I just would not send a link to other coverage and think, oh, you want to cover it too, because typically it's completely the opposite. If a news outlet already covered you, then news outlet number 2 does not want to cover you or wants to cover something different. And it's that something different you should concentrate on. A different customer, a different piece of information, a different photo, a different, you know, quotes, something that makes their coverage unique from what's already gone before.
Thank you.
Small question about what is your opinion about the paid and not paid articles?
If you are paying for it, then I wouldn't say that's true journalism. Yeah.
I put that in the same category as if you're going to pay to be included in an investor pitch, you know, it's a waste of your time. And Innovation Works never recommends it. If most investors should invite you, and it should either be something nominal or free. That's our point of view. The same is true with coverage. If it's true journalism, as Sophie said, it's not paid. However, that isn't to say there isn't a place for paid content. It may be that that's the only way that you can break into a journal that you care about, you know, something very technical for a very specific audience. However, you need a strategy that moves you away from reliance on that.
Thank you.
I think you should only think about it paying to place content in very limited amounts and as part of your strategy.
Right. And most like respected news organizations don't have a paid content option either.
I just received many mails from looked like the big public publishers that they also asking all the time for kind of payment. So this is why I'm asking.
Yeah, that's a pickle because of course they want your paid dollars. If it's really, really, I mean, you could experiment with it. If you've got, it's just like using paid AdWords on Facebook or through some other medium. $100, try it out. See if it works for you and make sure you're using a code or something that's unique to that paid advertising campaign so you can see if it actually works. It's the same with paid advertising in any other publication or any other media. I would either send them to a page on my website that's unique so you could track it. Does anybody actually use that? If you find that it's not worth the small amount of money that you paid for it, I would never use up a lot of my budget that way. But a small amount of your budget and you want to see if it's effective, make sure that you're testing it in some way. You're sending them to a page on a website or you're asking them to follow up with you for more information and please reference this code, but some way to sort of track it and see if it's effective.
Thanks.
I know we're just about at time. So I think the only thing that is left that I wanted to say at least is, you know, like media, like we said at the beginning, is only one part of a full communication strategy. And I think it's just important to always have your goals in mind with a story, because the advantage of media, even though it might seem like a lot of work and different hoops to jump through and outreach, the advantage is that, you know, one, it really lends a credibility to your business because of fact checking and things like that. Two, there's really an audience that media outlets have that they could be your next customers. They could be potential investors. So you're really reaching people that you might not otherwise be connected to. And, you know, finally, it really, you know, shows that you are a leader in your local economy. And that's always a great thing to be. And it can just help you make so many connections more formally and more efficiently than you might otherwise have an opportunity to.
That was a great thought to end on.
All right. Well, we're always free for questions too. If you have any follow-up things, I think Joyce gave you guys our emails, so you know, never hesitate to reach out.
I definitely will. And thank you so much, Terri and Sophie, for this great presentation. I will share those slides and the other set of slides that I couldn't get my hands on quick enough to everyone, as well as this recording. And thank you again. I just wanted to add, and I put it in the chat, please don't forget, we do have tabling space for you to provide, you know, any one-pagers, business cards, pamphlets, you know, within reason. We can't do full displays, but a place for you to share information on Thursday evening. So please remember to bring that with you, and we'll make sure that that's all set up. And
Thanks for this opportunity. It was fun to meet all of you and to hear a little of your story, because when reporters ask us, hey, what's going on in the startup world, it gives us a little bit more to talk about. So I appreciate that. Thank you. Thank you, Joyce.
Joyce, I have a quick clarifying question. Is it one table for like everyone, or is it like a table for each company? Like, can we bring like tech demos and things?
We have space for two. It's two long 8-foot tables, so it will be for everyone.
Okay, so just bring like the one pager and some basic things, not like a whole like entourage or something.
Right.
So
Okay.
don't bring a
Right.
banner.
Right. Don't bring a whole display.
Okay, thanks.
Alex, you can't bring a seat. Sorry.
I'm small. I have small ones.
Yes. But,
Yeah, you should get some like stress balls made. Those
Right.
are adorable.
we'll have space for those. But it's going to be great. I walked the space yesterday, and it's going to be fantastic. I'm excited.